So there's an ongoing story that's broken in the last few days regarding the former Scottish First Minister and basically the face of Scottish independence, Alex Salmond. Um, so I want to talk a little bit just about the possible consequences of this as I see it on Scottish nationalism. This is, first of all, the charges that Mr. Salmond has been accused of as reported by the Scotsman. He has been accused of breach of the peace, indecent assault, Sexual Offences Scotland Act 2009, S3, presumably that means segment 3. Indecent assault, sexual offences. There's various acts here, but there's a string of serious allegations, including rape. Now, let me just say from the outset, I believe everyone is entitled to due process. So I believe that Alex Salmond should have his day in court. I think all the evidence needs to be presented. There is a unique situation with this in that he is one of the best known politicians in the United Kingdom. And I have no doubt that his defense lawyers will argue that the trial will be prejudiced because of his prominence in the British media. Um, that could be true to an extent, but unfortunately, it's difficult to get around that because you're not going to find any jurors in the whole of Scotland that hasn't heard of this man. So there isn't really any way around it. He should get a fair trial, and all the information needs to be available. But as for keeping out of the public eye, I've always believed that rape defendants have the right to anonymity, but the problem in a case like this, when the defendant is so prominent, I could see the problem of not naming him in that people will then speculate who is it, and you could actually have a situation where innocent men are named as the potential defendant. So in this case, it may be justified that the defendant is named. Now, Nicola Sturgeon has distanced herself, and she said that they are not going to, they're going to be consistent in terms of the law being applied. But I do wonder, will the SNP, I mean, they pontificated on Trump's misogyny and Trump's attitudes to women. I wonder, will the SNP hold the same standards if Alex Salmond is indeed found guilty? These are very serious accusations. Um, there will be some hardcore Salmond supporters who say, oh, it's all a witch hunt, it's all orchestrated. The way I see it is there's no smoke without fire. If this was one allegation, one vague allegation, I would concede that. But these are very specific allegations, and there are many of them. So I think there's no smoke without fire. That's my gut feeling. But let him have his day in court, let him have due process, and if he's found guilty, he must face the same justice as any other rapist would. No special treatment. Um, for me, I think there's going to be implications here on Scottish nationalism because Alex Salmond is the face of Scottish nationalism. He is the figurehead. Nicola Sturgeon may have been First Minister now for several years, and she may have made her mark, but Alex Salmond really is the father, the modern father of Scottish nationalism. Um, I have no time for the man. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, him having a show on Russia Today, the Alex Salmond show, is tantamount to treason because Russia Today, RT, is a weapon of the Kremlin. I understand there's legal terminology around what is defined as treason, but as far as I'm concerned, that's if that's not treason, I don't know what is. Actively promoting anti-British propaganda on the network of a hostile foreign state. I mean, if this was a Cold War, it would absolutely be treason. Um, so the fact that that show is obviously going to end is a good thing. RT will no doubt be trying to find ways around this, like trying to make it out the British are persecuting him or trying to silence him, because RT is garbage. It's anti-British propaganda and it's a weapon against the British state. That is very obvious. Now, what I mentioned about its effect on Scottish nationalism, it's clear that there's already rifts within the SNP. Apparently, Alex Salmond, any reference to Alex Salmond has been airbrushed from their website, and I understand that happened even before his arrest. So there's clearly a big rift between Salmond and Sturgeon. And Quite honestly, if anything that weakens the SNP is good in my opinion. It has to be the truth. It has to be based on facts. But I'm not going to cry over it. I think the fall of the SNP would be a great thing because their sole agenda is the breakup of this country. So if the SNP is divided, and okay, the Conservatives are also very divided, so is Labour, but it's going to put any sort of notion of any calls for independence on hold. That's a good thing. The last thing we need in this country is a declaration of independence from the Scottish nationalists, not from Scotland. Most Scots don't want it from the separatists. The only countries that would recognize it is Russia. I don't think China would, because although relations right now are rocky with China, they have their own separatist movements. So, they would, although the situation is very different because in Tibet and Xinjiang, people are tortured. And they keep those provinces under Chinese control at the point of a gun. So it's in no way comparable. Whereas Scots have absolute freedom to dissent. So otherwise, Alex Salmond, if Alex Salmond was in Russia, and this is the irony, he works for the Russian government because working for RT means you're working for the Russian government. Um, if he was a political dissident in Russia, do you think he'd get a fair trial? Not a chance in hell. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting seeing what implications this has. I'm not going to say he's guilty, but my gut feeling is there's no smoke without fire. Give him a fair trial. That all the evidence be presented. But if it leads to the collapse of nationalism, because he is the face of nationalism, I'm not going to cry a single tear, because I think Scottish nationalism is one of the biggest internal threats we face. I don't think it's going to happen, but there, that's how I see it.